I got out of the truck thinking I was going to remove an object from the road. When I came back, someone had opened my compartment and closed it again. That's when I understood it wasn't about the object. I was on I-10, on a long, dark stretch between Tallahassee and Jacksonville, hauling boxes of electrical parts to a warehouse in Florida. Light load, dry trailer, nothing to warrant drama. Except I was on one of those shifts where you're awake, but not fully recovered. I slept poorly at a noisy rest stop, woke up with a sore neck, and spent the day pushing coffee and energy drinks as if that could replace rest. The known problem I had been ignoring was simple: an intermittent pressure warning on the front right tire. I would inflate it, the warning would disappear, and I would continue. At the repair shop, they told me it could be the sensor. I chose to believe them because money was tight, and because I wanted to finish that delivery without losing the bonus. It was almost 2 a.m, the road was clear, few cars, no trucks nearby. I kept the onboard radio on low volume 19, just out of habit of listening to the hissing sound. That's when I saw the anomaly. First, a small glint on the asphalt, like reflective tape. Then, the shape became clear. An industrial-sized red fire extinguisher, lying right in the center of the right lane, with the handle facing me. It wasn't rolling, it was positioned. A few meters ahead, there was a black piece that I didn't identify at first, something like a large wedge or a piece of thick rubber. My reaction was to brake lightly and straighten the truck. Swerving was possible, but I didn't have a complete view of the left lane because of a gentle curve. Going over that was risking a tire blowout or damaging the undercarriage. And I, tired and still stuck in that moral compass of preventing someone from getting hurt, made the wrong choice in the most convincing way possible. I pulled over to the side of the road right after, turned on my hazard lights, and got out with my gloves and flashlight. I didn't think about calling anyone, I didn't think about checking a map. I just wanted to remove the fire extinguisher from the road and keep going. The air was damp, smelling of pine and wet dirt. The silence was so profound I could hear the refrigerated truck in the distance as if it were on another road. I walked back with my flashlight swinging, and as I got near the fire extinguisher, I noticed something that gave me a small but real chill. Recent tire tracks in the mud on the shoulder, going in and out very close by, as if someone had stopped to put them there. I bent down and picked up the fire extinguisher by the handle. It was heavier than it should have been. It didn't seem empty, and when I stood up, I heard a dry thud coming from my truck like a small rock had hit the tank. I turned the flashlight around quickly. I didn't see anyone. Just the white side of my horse, flashing orange, and the dark trailer. I rushed back. I climbed the steps, and before even touching the door, I saw the small door of the side compartment was ajar, just a hand's breadth. Exactly enough for me to notice. Exactly enough for me to doubt myself. I had locked it. I got into the cabin, locked everything, and stared in the mirror as if waiting for someone to appear. Nothing. I picked up my cell phone. No signal. Not a single bar. I glanced back at the CB radio, and as if someone had waited for me to sit down, the radio crackled loudly. "White truck, dry cargo. Turn off the hazard lights and wait." The voice was masculine, clear, unhurried. It didn't sound drunk or playful. It sounded official in a way that fools tired people. I didn't answer. I just looked back. In my rearview mirror, about 100 meters away, an amber light appeared, flashing. Then another. A dark vehicle stopped on the shoulder, beyond the perfect range of my high beams. It wasn't a police car. It wasn't an ambulance. It was enough to make it seem like something. The voice returned. "Remain in the cabin, hands visible, procedure." I felt my body wanting to obey, and that annoyed me. I took a deep breath, engaged the gear, and pulled slowly onto the road without jerking. I wanted to get out of there without provoking anyone, without turning it into a chase. The vehicle behind pulled out as well. It didn't accelerate to catch up. It just stayed there, maintaining a constant distance, as if measuring. The dashboard beeped. The front right tire pressure warning light flashed and disappeared. The ABS light came on and went off. Nothing definitive. Just doubt. Just the kind of doubt that makes a driver want to stop just to double-check. The voice on the radio reappeared, now on a different channel, as if it were jumping frequencies. "You have a fault. Pull over to the nearest recess, quick inspection." I continued. The road stretched out in dark sections with brief flashes of reflective signs. The vehicle alternated its distance. It approached when I increased it, retreated when I decreased it. It wasn't trying to collide. It wasn't trying to cut me off. The objective was different: to tire me out, to distract me, to make me feel like I was being driven. The amber light reflected in my mirror and painted the interior of the cabin orange. A conditioned reflex. My brain associated that color with a tow truck, construction, authority on the road. The trick worked precisely because it was incomplete. The radio hissed. It doesn't enter the post. It pulls over to the previous setback. That made me more alert than any threat. True authority doesn't care about rank. True authority wants spotlight, cameras, witnesses. Whoever wants to remove me from a well-lit place isn't trying to help me. I looked for a way out. I saw a rest area 8 miles sign and clung to it like a rope. I continued at a steady speed, avoiding hard braking. The truck began to vibrate subtly in the steering wheel like a tire slowly losing pressure. Calculated damage. Not to knock me down. To push me onto the shoulder. That's when the vehicle behind changed its pace. It approached closer than before. The amber lights flashed faster for a few seconds and then returned to the slow pattern, as if it were a command. I felt a tightness in my chest, not of panic, but of cold anger. It had all been rehearsed. The radio came in with a short, unemotional order. Turn off the engine when you stop. Don't drive. I hadn't said I was going to stop. I hadn't asked for instructions. Even so, they were already narrating my next move. In the middle of that stretch, they tried the dirtiest trick. The pickup truck turned off its amber lights for 2 seconds and then turned them back on, just to throw me off balance in the rearview mirror. Then it pulled closer than before and flashed its white headlights quickly like a police car's signature. My body reacted before I could even think. I felt the idiotic urge to pull over just to put an end to it. The radio came back with a calculated technical detail. Pressure dropping in the front right tire. If you brake hard, you'll lose control. It was exactly the fear I had, so it seemed like knowledge, not a guess. The order came disguised as concern. They didn't need to hit me. They needed to tire me out and convince me that I had no choice. As we passed under an overpass, a narrow maintenance bay appeared, completely dark, just gravel. The voice took advantage of this, short and dry. Go into the bay. Now. I didn't obey. I kept going straight, took a deep breath, and repeated to myself that I would only stop where there were cameras and people awake. When the rest area appeared, I went straight to the most illuminated part, near the building and a CCTV sign. I parked facing the cameras, high beams on, engine running. I didn't get out. I picked up my cell phone. Now it had a weak signal bar, enough for a call that kept dropping and coming back. The vehicle pulled in behind and stopped at the edge of the parking lot, where the light was already fading. The amber lights continued to flicker. I saw a door open and a silhouette descend, but it didn't cross the illuminated area. It remained in shadow, as if the light were a fence. The silhouette raised an arm and made a classic gesture of authority, palm down, telling me to move further back. Too rehearsed, too perfect. The radio hissed, now almost a whisper. Move to the back of the building. Inspection area. I called 911 as soon as the call connected. I spoke quickly, without dramatizing. Location: a vehicle with amber lights following me. Orders via cable. Attempt to force me to stop in an isolated area. I said I had a flat tire and that I was on a roll. As I spoke, the amber lights went out. The silhouette went back inside the vehicle. He reversed slowly and drove away from the rest area without haste, as if he didn't want to draw attention. I waited a few minutes, then carefully got out and went straight to the front right tire. There it was. A thick screw embedded near the tire shoulder, leaking slowly. It wasn't bad luck. It was installed. I could ride a few more kilometers before it became dangerous, enough for me to panic and stop wherever was most convenient for them. In the side compartment, I found the lock marked, as if a thin blade had been inserted there. And one small thing was missing. My warning triangle. Not the kind a thief takes. It's what someone takes to limit your options when you're forced to pull over again. The patrol arrived later, asked questions, requested a description of the vehicle. I had no license plate, no face, just an amber light and a calm voice. They took notes, said they would patrol the area. Nothing more. The next day, I passed by the fire extinguisher station again, with the sun high in the sky. There was no extinguisher, no black piece, no obvious mark on the asphalt. Only the memory of how it had been aligned, as if it had been assembled and disassembled with the same coldness. Then, with the spare tire installed and the adrenaline subsiding, the anger became clear. The scheme was too economical to be improvised, an object positioned to make me get out, a compartment tampered with to mess me up, a voice on the dashboard to occupy my thoughts, and a screw in the tire to turn doubt into obedience. In the end, nobody stole cargo, nobody appeared in photos. Only the loss remained, and the uncomfortable certainty that I almost stopped in the exact spot they chose. And that was enough for me to never forget. I delivered the cargo late, lost the bonus, and paid dearly for the tire and the repair of the cargo compartment. No one was arrested. No one gave me a complete answer. And that's what weighed most heavily on me, understanding that they didn't need to attack me. They only needed to guide me using symbols and my own exhaustion, until I chose the wrong place to stop on my own. If you're enjoying these chilling stories, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any more terrifying tales to come. Now, get ready for another journey down dark and mysterious roads. I discovered that you can hijack a truck without touching it. You hijack the road and the driver does the rest on his own. I accepted that freight job on a transportation marketplace I use when money is tight each month. It was a standard service, pallets of plastic packaging leaving a hub near Kansas City. Delivery to a warehouse on the St. Louis side before dawn. Honest payment, reasonable delivery window, no sensitive materials. What really convinced me was the rating system. The platform ranks drivers like it's a game. If you refuse too many deliveries, arrive late, or go off route, your rating drops. And when your rating drops, the phone stops ringing. In the parking lot, everything was normal. Check-in via QR code, photo of the seal, photo of the odometer, digital signature. The app released the route and showed that reassuring green. Trip validated. I set the cruise control and entered the interstate highway with a clear head, thinking only about completing the trip and leaving. When everything is bureaucratic, you lower your alert without realizing it. Almost an hour later, the first message appeared silently and without urgency. It was an update, not a request. Active optimization, route adjustment applied to avoid incidents ahead. It didn't mention an accident, a roadblock, or a city. Even so, the map had already redrawn the route, and the accept button occupied half the screen. The maintain route button was small and gray, as if stubbornly. I tapped accept. The detour seemed rational. I exited onto a well-marked ramp, took a wide state highway, good asphalt, 2 lanes, spaced-out lampposts. The app spoke in its usual neutral tone, without hesitation, and every 5 or 6 minutes, it gave me a confirmation that served as psychological reinforcement. Route validated. Time within SLA. I didn't even realize when I stopped comparing it to what I knew. I just kept going. The road gradually emptied out, too slowly to sound threatening. First, fewer trucks. Then, only isolated cars. Then, practically nobody. The signs were still there, but they looked old, their reflective material worn, the names of small towns I didn't recognize. My phone fluctuated between 5G and LTE, then to no service for a few seconds, and then back. The map lagged a little and corrected itself. I'd seen this in rural areas before and hadn't paid much attention. The second obedience came as a command. Reduced to 55 MAPI for operational synchronization. Synchronization of what? It didn't say. But the word operational is an invisible leash. It triggers the professional fear of being labeled non-compliant. I reduced it. When I tried to open the support chat, it said, "Please wait. You are in queue." No agent, no name, no direct channel. A robot offered me options: delay, tire, document, route. I chose route. The response came as a stamp. Your route is validated. Continue. It didn't ask for details. It didn't ask where I was. It closed the issue before I could insist. That's when the micro-anomalies started, the small things that seem like defects, but form a pattern when you put them together. The telemetry panel stopped showing the road name and started displaying only local road. The message history would load for 2 seconds and then return me to the main screen, as if it didn't want me to review anything. And the tracking was out of sync. I saw license plates passing by, but the truck's location on the map seemed 2 or 3 minutes behind. It was as if I were running ahead of my own race. The first contradiction came in quick succession, as if 2 hands were simultaneously pushing and calming me. Message 1. Operational stop recommended. Seal verification. Message 2. Immediately following. Route validated. No further action required. Together, they made no sense. Seal verification is done on the tarmac, with a ticket, camera, and team. And yet the feeling was that I should obey, because the icon was the same, the seal was the same, the tone was the same. The authority came from the format, not the logic. I tried calling the platform's emergency number. It rang and dropped. I tried again, dropped. I tried outside the app using the contact saved on my phone. Voicemail. I went back to support. Processing. In queue. Please wait. It was like yelling at a polite wall. On the radio, a short hissing sound began to appear at irregular intervals, as if someone were testing the frequency. It wasn't conversation. It was presence. I lowered the volume and stared at the mirror, the roadside, the sign, anything that would give me a human reference point. That's when I saw the physical evidence. In the right rearview mirror, the side of the truck bed caught a reflection and revealed a small reflective sticker near the back, crookedly stuck on without a logo. It wasn't from the transport company. It wasn't a safety warning. It was generic, something you'd buy at a hardware store. I hadn't seen it when I left, and I'm sure of that because I always check the side of the truck bed when I leave, out of habit. The seal appeared intact, but when I zoomed in to observe the door in the reflection, I saw a thin scratch near the latch. It wasn't a cut to break it. It was a marking. A line that said, "This is the truck. This doesn't show up with vibration. Someone had bumped into it." The app beeped briefly and delivered the most human message of all. Pull over at the indicated point. Remain in the vehicle. It showed an unnamed icon, a point on the shoulder, as if it were an invisible parking lot. No serious human rights remain without identifying themselves. No company asks that in a place without infrastructure, without lighting, without cameras. This was logistics dressed as order, and the order depended on my cooperation. I understood the whole trap in one image. They didn't need to approach me while I was moving. They needed me to stop alone at a specific point and remain still, waiting for a procedure that would never have a face. No witnesses, no traffic, no signal. And if I complained later, the answer would be simple. The driver followed the system's instructions. I looked again in the left mirror and saw a distant headlight maintaining the same distance for too long. I changed my speed by 5 miles. It adjusted accordingly. I slowed down. It didn't get closer for me to recognize. It didn't disappear to reassure me. It just kept pace at the exact distance, as if it were calibrated. I had 2 bad choices. The first was to obey and stop voluntarily. The second was to break protocol and become the guilty party on paper. I chose the second. I turned off the app. I cut off the data. I deactivated the tracker, even knowing that this triggers an automatic alert. I took the nearest U-turn, even if it wasn't the most efficient one. I returned to the main highway where there was light, new signs, and enough cars so that I wasn't just an isolated point on the map. The headlight behind me tried to follow for a few minutes and then disappeared. It didn't accelerate to pass. It didn't remain visible to be remembered. It vanished as if it had received an instruction I no longer received. When the signal returned, my phone exploded with delayed notifications. Off route. Telemetry interrupted. Critical violation. Unauthorized action. No questions about security. No, do you need help? Just metrics, punishments, and canned phrases. I stopped at a large, well-lit gas station with cameras and activity and got off for the first time. The reflective sticker was still there. The scratch on the lock was also there. I took a photo, recorded a video, noted the time, got a receipt from the gas station to prove the location. I sent everything through the ticket system. The automatic reply came in less than a minute. Received, awaiting analysis. There was no analysis. Nobody called me. Nobody asked for more photos. Nobody wanted to know why a truck left a yard clean and appeared marked on the road. I delivered a 40-something minute late. The next day, the platform fined me for tracking shutdown and lowered my score. 3 days later came a warning of compromised reliability. 2 weeks later, I lost access to the best shipping options. The official version was ready. I was the problem. At the same gas station, I did something I'd never done before. I opened a public app from the State Transportation Department to see if there really was an incident ahead. There was nothing. No warnings, no road closures, no roadworks. Then I went to a simple traffic website that shows cameras on major highways. All the images were normal. Nothing justified the optimization. The only thing out of the ordinary was my route, and that didn't show up anywhere, because to the world I had only chosen a different route. On the day I was penalized, I tried to formally contest it. I wrote on the platform's form, attached photos, video, and the gas station receipt. The response came as if I hadn't even written anything. Your telemetry was voluntarily interrupted. Penalty upheld. There was no signature, no name, no investigation. I requested a reopening. I received topic closed. 2 weeks later, a driver I only knew by sight sent me a private message. He didn't want to talk publicly. He said he'd seen my name drop in the rankings and that this had already happened to others. He summarized 3 signs: messages with verbs in the imperative mood, signal loss immediately after the route validated confirmation, and instructions to stop without indicating a real location, with a name and structure. At the end of the year, I heard the same story from another person in another state, with another app. It was always the same logic: a small detour, automatic confirmation, isolation, support that becomes a labyrinth, a generic order to stop, and the final cost falling on the driver, because on paper it was he who agreed. Today I continue driving, but I treat the system as I would a polite stranger. I listen, I record, I check with external sources, and I never let an automatic confirmation replace my perception, because the terror in that case didn't come from a person on the side of the road. It came from a process that seemed neutral, but was being operated by someone who knew exactly how we obey. I've always been careful with the lock, the curtain, the compartment, those basic things. So when I got into the cabin and saw that everything was exactly in place, I understood immediately. Nobody rushes in and leaves everything perfect. Someone had been there long enough to close it the way I do. I was on probation at a small trucking company in Kansas, driving medium-length routes to demonstrate consistency before being cleared for long trips. The control was simple but strict. A stop app, a photo of the fuel seal, a fuel log, and a list of deviations that the supervisor checked every Monday. I tried hard not to appear on that list. The problem is, when you drive thinking about the report, you start negotiating with obvious signals. That night, I was towing a trailer of packaged food, leaving Wichita and heading up I-35 to near Des Moines, Iowa. It was a direct and, in theory, uneventful route. I had planned to stop at a large truck stop in northern Missouri, refuel, use the restroom, and take the mandatory break. The tank was good, but the water in the cab was almost empty, and I had promised myself I wouldn't make an impromptu stop. The first mistake was stupid. I forgot to refill my water bottle before leaving the parking lot. I only realized it when the bottle in the cup holder was empty and my throat started to burn, that dryness that irritates you without you even noticing. I thought about ignoring it and moving on, but irritation is a form of fatigue, and I'd already been accumulating bad nights in noisy parking lots. I didn't want to drive while irritated. I also didn't want to stop. The second error was technical. A short warning appeared on the dashboard indicating a fault in the passenger side compartment sensor. I'd seen that before. Sometimes it was just vibration. Sometimes it was the latch getting dusty. The warning flashed and disappeared, as if the truck itself had given up trying to convince me. I took that as permission to continue. But 20 miles later, the warning came back for 2 seconds, and then went out again. I did what everyone does when they don't want to deal with a problem. I looked for a quick solution that seemed responsible. A small plaza appeared on the map near an exit, with a bathroom icon and a vending machine. It wasn't my planned stop, but it was close enough for me to justify it as a technical check. I told myself it would just be water and a quick look at the lock. 5 minutes. The exit led to a short, dark side road that ended in an open parking lot and a low building. From a distance, it seemed normal. Lights on in the windows, a reflective sign, trash cans lined up. When I turned and the highway disappeared behind trees and embankments, the normality became fragile. There were no cars. There were no trucks. Only my headlights sweeping the lines of asphalt and stopping at lampposts that flickered on and off in alternating areas. I parked facing the exit, as close to the building as possible, and left the engine idling. I logged the stop on the app as a check. The building door was unlocked. Inside, the heating was on, the vending machines were working, and the TV on the wall was tuned to some channel, volume low. All of this should have reassured me. Instead, it bothered me, because someone had left it running to look occupied. In the hallway there were recent marks of wet flooring, like boots going in and out. The bathroom was clean with fresh toilet paper, and the sink still had droplets of water on the rim, as if someone had used it shortly before. I didn't see anyone, I didn't hear any voices. I only heard a single metallic noise coming from somewhere behind the counter, and then silence. It didn't repeat itself, and I hated that. Equipment repeats itself. People try not to repeat themselves. I grabbed 2 bottles from the vending machine, used the restroom, and went back outside without looking around. I wanted to end the stop before it became a regular rest day on my log. The night was cold and dry, and yet the air near the truck had a damp, human smell, like clothes stored under a seat. I smelled it first and tried to ignore it, as if ignoring it would transform sensation into imagination. Before going upstairs, I looked at the side compartment. The lock seemed intact. The door seemed closed. I ran my hand along the edge and felt a scraped dust, a clean line amidst the dust, as if someone had carefully touched it. I hadn't done that. On the paint, near the lock, there was a very short, almost invisible scratch, like an attempt that stopped halfway. I climbed into the cabin, locked it, and stood there for a few seconds, just listening to the engine. Everything seemed in its place. Backpack aligned, document folder in the same corner, curtain fastened correctly, even the parking brake lever in the position I always left it. Exactly the way I leave it. That's when my stomach sank. Because someone who gets in quickly leaves a mess. Whoever closes everything properly had time to notice. The panel flashed open compartment and went out. A second, maybe less. I turned off the interior light and stood in silence. That's when I heard a single sound from outside, coming from the trailer, like a light thud of metal against metal, followed by nothing. No footsteps. No door slamming. No engine starting. Just a sound, like a test. And then silence returned. I didn't get out to check. I didn't open the curtain to look for shade. I engaged the gear and drove off slowly, as if I were just changing parking spaces. I only accelerated when I got back on the highway, and even then I waited for a headlight to appear behind me. Nothing appeared. That scared me more than being chased. Being chased gives you a target. Silence gives you doubt. I drove to a large truck stop in Missouri, one of those with a 24-hour store, cameras, and constant activity. I stopped under a bright light near the entrance, doors locked. I called the company's call center and then the local police. I described the clean line in the dust, the warning on the dashboard, and the unique sound in the trailer. I felt ridiculous, like I was asking not to be taken seriously. Even so, I preferred to look ridiculous than to go back out into the dark alone. When the patrol arrived, they didn't make a scene. They inspected the lock on the side compartment and photographed the scratch on the paint. The lock wasn't broken. One of the officers explained that this was common when someone uses a thin blade or a pressure tool to force the mechanism without leaving an obvious mark. They opened the compartment and found, behind the jack, something that wasn't mine. A small kit of industrial Velcro and black tape, folded in a way that was too organized to be trash. The search continued around the trailer. Under the frame, held in place by a magnet, was a small, switched-off device with a battery. A locator. They said it was used to track the truck afterward, waiting for a better spot to act. It didn't have to be in that plaza. The plaza was just where someone could pull over without being seen. Then came the chilling detail. One of the police officers asked me to open the stop app and show him the exact time I had registered my entry. He compared it to the truck's log. The flashing warning light on the side compartment had appeared the minute I left the building. Not before. Not during the drive. The exact minute I was returning. It was as if someone had touched the latch just enough to trigger an alert, without actually opening it, just to make me anxious. Anxiety doesn't make a sound, but it changes your grip on the steering wheel and your judgment. During the same inspection, they found another external sign. A greasy fingerprint on the lower edge of the passenger door, in a spot I didn't touch when getting in. It wasn't perfect proof, but it was the kind of dirt that doesn't appear by chance. And on the ground near my front tire, there was a grain of gravel mixed with damp mud, even though the night was dry. Someone had come from somewhere else, another terrain, and passed by there. They also checked the truck stop cameras not to find anyone's face, but to understand the pattern. In one of the recordings, well before I arrived there, a car appeared stopped at the edge of the parking lot, outside the illuminated area with its headlights off. The car didn't enter, it didn't refuel, it didn't go to the store. It remained motionless for far too long to be a coincidence. Minutes after I pulled up under the cameras and called the police, the car slowly drove away and disappeared down the access road, as if it had waited for exactly the right moment to back away. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the route in my head, trying to figure out when I had given them space. The answer was always the same. I gave them space when I chose a place that seemed normal enough. I gave them space when I wanted to resolve a technical detail alone, quickly, without an audience, so it wouldn't turn into a conversation with anyone. The next day, already in the delivery yard, I noticed another indirect sign of intrusion. The seal was intact, but the lock on my toolbox, the one attached to the side of the cab, had a thread that was slightly different. I hadn't touched it. It was a minimal difference, but I knew how to recognize my own habit. That's when the fear changed shape. It wasn't about that particular plaza anymore. It was about the fact that someone had touched several parts of my truck as if they were studying what I was doing, without any hurry. The final confirmation came when the company sent me an internal photo of the trailer taken during unloading. In the corner of one of the pallets, there was an almost invisible transparent sticker, deliberately placed there. It wasn't a shipper's label or a verification mark. It was a discreet sign, the kind that goes unnoticed by those unloading, but serves to identify the cargo later if someone wants to track or select a target. The police said this was used to mark the cargo without tampering with the seal, waiting for a moment when the truck was vulnerable and without witnesses. After that night, my mindset changed in small ways. I stopped treating a functioning place as synonymous with safety. I understood that a building with lights and a TV on might just be a setup to make you want to go downstairs. I learned to respect the feeling that everything is too perfect, because that kind of perfection doesn't exist in the real world at 3 a.m. And I started following a simple rule, one that isn't in any official training. If I go back to the booth and feel that someone has spent time inside my space, I don't look for proof. I look for light, camera, and people. Because whoever comes in and closes everything the way I do isn't improvising. They're practicing, and someone's practice is always a sign that there's a plan,